Hey nerds, with the release of Duskmourn House of Horror, we were introduced to 27 new commanders, and while many people might ask, which of these is the most powerful, I love asking the question how fun they are. Alright, let's get into it. First up is Altanok the Thrice Called. This is a 7 mana, 9/9 insect beast that has trample, and whenever it becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, draw a card. And you can pay 1 and a green to discard it to return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Now, look, I think they fixed Nadu here. Jokes aside though, this bug doesn't really interest me as a commander. I like that it replaces itself when it gets targeted, but otherwise, it's just a big bug that has trample. Maybe I'm missing something here, but I'm not really interested in this as a commander, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in the not fun category. Next up is Aminatou the Veil Piercer. This is a 4 mana, 2/4 human wizard that has, at the beginning of your upkeep, Surveil 2, and each enchantment card in your hand has Miracle. Its Miracle cost is equal to its mana cost, reduced by 4. New Aminatou is a pretty unique commander that requires a little setup for a really powerful effect. Now, Miracle has been a mechanic I've loved since being first introduced to it when I was building a Yannette deck, and getting to give all of your enchantments Miracle for cheap is actually really cool. And she's the face commander of the Esper Precon, which will definitely be pretty easy to get, and I'm definitely interested in building this commander. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in the want to build tier. Next up is Arabelle the Abandoned Doll. This is a 2 mana, 1/3 toy. Whenever it attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creature cards you control with power 2 or less. The only thing I hate more than clowns are dolls. They're little creepy glass eyes that stare into your soul and follow you around the room, and Arabelle is definitely a scary commander, especially for only 2 mana. I love that this card isn't checking for base power, but just actual power, so you can abuse cards like Elish Norn Grand Cenobite or Cathar's Crusade with it. If you're looking for a low to the ground, pretty unique Boros commander, I definitely think this is a really cool card. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to definitely put them in the want to build category, I think above Aminatou. It's pretty close, but just Esper Miracle seems so sweet. Next up is Kian Corrupted Memory. This is a 4 mana, 2/2 illusion. As long as its power is even, you may cast non-creature spells as though they had flash. As long as its power is odd, you may cast creature spells as though they had flash. And whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on them. This is the alternate commander from the Simic Precon, and it cares about drawing cards. Now, while its ability is unique as it changes when its power changes, I think this ability is going to be a pain to track in paper, and will definitely lead to some weird misplays. Now, that aside, I think this is a fine commander, but I'm not really interested in building Simic card draw. I think there are just better and maybe more interesting card draw commanders out there. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in the fun tier, but I think at the tail end of fun, kind of in the kind of fun, just because of how unique their ability is. Next up is Kona Rescue Beastie. This is a 4 mana, 4/3 Beast Survivor, and it has Survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Kona is tapped, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Now, we can easily tap Kona using cards like Smuggler's Copter or Ornery Tumblerag to cheat Haymakers into play, like Portal to Phyrexia or Avenger of Zendikar. While this is powerful, I find effects like these to be pretty boring. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in the kind of fun tier. I'm happy to have my mind changed on this, but just cheating big fatties into play isn't something I'm that interested in doing. Next up is Mariana Vendrell. This is a 5 mana, 3/5 human warlock. When they enter, reveal the top 7 cards of your library, and put all enchantment cards from among them into your hand, and the rest onto the bottom of your library in a random order. And you can tap to lock or unlock a target room you control. Activate only as a sorcery. Rooms are a new enchantment type. If you haven't seen them, you can go ahead and check those out. They're really cool. But this effect seems incredibly powerful, especially when you combine it with rooms that make tokens and then an intruder alarm. This lets you basically unlock and lock doors continually, so if there's some other lock payoffs in the set, this is going to go ham with that. And intruder alarm's pretty cheap now. You still need another way of untapping Marana, aside from intruder alarm shenanigans, but I think in 5 colors you'll be able to find that. This card is definitely going to the very fun, maybe want to build actually. It's definitely the top end of very fun. I don't know how I feel about 5-color piles, but I'm gonna keep them in mind. Next up is Marvin Murderous Mimic. This is a 2-mana 2/2 toy. It's colorless. It has all activated abilities of creatures you control that don't have the same name as this creature. I'm really glad they made this commander colorless instead of Wooburg. It seems like a really powerful combo commander that can easily go infinite with Pili-Pali and Palladian Mirror. And then when you have access to cards like Kuldotha Forge Master as a tutor option, I can see this deck getting out of hand very quick. Now, while unique, I don't find pure combo commanders like this as enjoyable to play. However, I will enjoy playing against it. Don't ask me why. So for that reason, I'm going to put Marvin in the very fun tier. This might be questionable considering how combo-centric it is, but I enjoy playing against decks like these, so that's why it's going there. Next up is Nashi, Searcher in the Dark. It's a 2-mana 2/2 Rat Ninja Wizard with Menace, and whenever they deal combat damage to a player, you mill that many cards. You may put any number of legendary and or enchantment cards from among them into your hand. If you put no cards into your hand this way, put a +1/+1 counter on Nashi. Nashi seems like an interesting but underwhelming card. You have to deal combat damage with them in order to get the trigger, and if you whiff, you just put a single counter on it. So the payoff doesn't seem great. This will be great in the 99 of decks, but I don't think this will be a really fun commander at the helm of a deck. So I'm going to put them in kind of fun below Kona. Next up is Nico, Light of Hope. This is a 4-mana 3/4 human wizard that when they enter, you create 2 shard tokens. Shard tokens are enchantments with you may pay 2 generic, sack this enchantment, scry 1, then draw. And you can pay 2 and tap to exile target non-legendary creature you control. Shards you control becomes copy of it till the beginning of the next end step. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So do you remember Nico Aris from Kaldheim? No? Well, me either. And much like their Planeswalker counterpart, Nico makes shards. But unlike old Nico, we can actually turn all of our shards into a copy of a creature, and then blink that creature at the same time. Now you do need to tap Nico for this, but Intruder Alarm means we can do this on each player's turn, because it's not restricted to sorcery speed. And if you use Spark Double to make a copy of Nico, then you can blink that Spark Double, and then have it enter as Nico, making more shards. It actually seems pretty sweet. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and definitely put Nico in very fun. I definitely think behind Wooburg Rooms, but in front of Marvin. Next up is Norn, Swift Survivalist. This is a 1-mana 2/1 human coward that can't block, and whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may exile it. Then you may play that card from exile this turn. Now, unrelated, I always thought Norn the Wary was a goblin until I saw this card and realized it's actually a human. But that aside, I definitely want to build this commander. I love the unique effect it provides, and I think it's a great option if you're looking to build a mono-red good stuff deck. Now, I don't know how many effects in mono-red there are to force blocks, but I definitely think you want to add those interactions to decks. And I'm definitely interested in putting Norn in the 99 of a creature lands deck, since we get to play the exiled card, which means we can play creature lands from exile. So like I said, Norn's definitely a wanna build. I think maybe it's closer to the tail end of wanna build, but it's definitely up there. Next up is Rendmaw, Creaking Nest. This is a 5-mana 5/5 Scarecrow with Menace and Reach, and whenever it enters, and whenever you play a card with 2 or more card types, each player creates a tapped 2/2 Blackbird creature token with flying. The tokens are goaded for the rest of the game. Now this is the alternate Golgari Precon commander, and it honestly seems really fun. The biggest issue I can see with this deck is giving your opponent's creatures to sacrifice if they're playing an Aristocrats deck. But other than that, this Scarecrow helps speed up games by giving flying attackers that are goated. Also, it does say play, which means you probably want to add all the artifact lands you can to this deck. This commander seems very fun, and also like an absolute house if you want to build Reaper King. So for that reason, this is definitely going to hit the very fun tier. Next up is Ripsaw Hunter. This is a 4-mana 4/4 human survivor, and it has survival, so at the beginning of your second main phase, if Rip Spawn Hunter is tapped, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is its power. Put any number of creature and or vehicle cards with different powers from among them into your hand. Put the rest onto the bottom of your library in a random order. Similar to Kona, Rip needs to be tapped in order to trigger its ability. And while its ability seems pretty powerful, letting you potentially draw a bunch of cards, That's pretty much all this commander does. You'll want to tap it to get value, and that's pretty much it. So, while I wish it let us fill the graveyard so we could build green-white Reanimator, it doesn't do that, and so I think I'm going to put Rip into the kind of fun tier. Next up is the Jolly Balloon Man. This is a 3-mana 1/4 human clown with haste, and you can pay 1, tap it, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control, except it's a 1/1 red balloon creature token in addition, creature, not a token, in addition to its other colors and types, and it has flying and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, activate only as a sorcery. So, like I said earlier, I absolutely hate clowns, and I hate this card. And by that, I mean I hate the art. I love it, but I hate it. Balloon faces, it's just so creepy. But this card seems actually really fun as a commander. It kind of reminds me of Hoffrey Ghostforge, where you want to play creatures with powerful enter triggers, death triggers, or both. So like Solemn Simulacrum, Spirited Companion, or Village Bellringer. In fact, Village Bellringer can go infinite with Mana Echoes or Ashnod's Altar along with this commander, and put this commander right in the fun tier. Its clownness is kind of dragging it down a little bit for me, which might be unfair, but god do I hate clowns. Next up is the Lord of Pain. This is a 5-mana, 5/5 human assassin with menace. Your opponents can't gain life, and whenever a player casts their first spell each turn, choose another target player. Lord of Pain deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to the chosen player. So this is the alternate Rakdos Precon commander, and it reminds me a lot of Vile Smasher the Fierce. It also prevents only your opponents from gaining life, not you. So if you can give this lifelink with something like Shadow Spear, whenever this card deals damage, you actually gain that life. Same thing with Infect. If you give it Tainted Strike, and give it Infect for a turn, you can give people poison counters. This definitely seems like a fun commander if you want a fast game, but I'm not sure how often this commander will end up sticking to the table. It's probably going to be an absolute target for removal. I think I'm going to put this in... This is tough. I want to put it maybe in Very Fun. I think I'm going to put it in the tail end of Very Fun. No, maybe right in the middle here. I definitely think it's a really powerful effect. I'm trying to think of how fun it would be to play against. It's only once per turn, so yeah, it's going to go right here in Very Fun. Next up is the Master of Keys. This is a X and 3, 3/3 horror with flying. When it enters, you put X +1/+1 counters on it and mill twice X cards. Each enchantment card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana value, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Now this is the alternate Esper Face commander that gives enchantments escape. You still need to pay the mana cost for them, which is a bummer. And while I think the card art is great, and I love creatures that can mill, I'm not sure what to do with this horror. I'm not really interested in building this, but maybe it could be fun. So I'm going to go ahead and definitely put this commander, I think, in kind of fun. Maybe at the tail end of fun, because I like mill, but right now I think it belongs in the kind of fun tier. Next up is the Mind Skinner. This is a 3-mana 10/1 Nightmare Horror. It can't be blocked, and if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. Now, I really love this card, despite it being really fragile. The triple blue casting cost is real, and 1 toughness means this dies to a lot of removal. Now, ideally, you'll play this and just win on the same turn, using some sort of dramatic reversal, Isochron Scepter, Prodigal Sorcerer combo, and I think this is probably going to be a lot better in the 99 of certain decks. But that casting cost seems pretty tough if you're not mono blue mill. All of that aside, I still think this is going to be a very fun commander and definitely pretty close to wanna build. I'm going to put it at the top end of Very Fun. Next up is the Swarm Weaver. This is a 4-mana 2/3 Scarecrow that when it enters, create 2 1/1 black and green insect creature tokens with flying, and it has Delirium. As long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, insects and spiders you control get +1/+1 and have Death Touch. I'm not really interested in this as a spider insect commander. It's probably really great in the 99 of some decks, but I'm not sure how interested I am in building this. It seems pretty underwhelming, and even though I do love Golgari, I don't think I'm really that interested in this. So I'm going to go ahead and put this at the tail end of Kind of Fun. Next up is the Wandering Rescuer. This is a 5-mana 3/4 human samurai noble with flash, convoke, double strike, and other tapped creatures you control have hexproof. This was a card clearly made for 60 card formats and limited. There isn't anything on this that really makes me want to build her as a commander. Seems great in the 99 though, but But unfortunately, I have to put this card in the not fun tier. Next up is Toby, Beastie Befriender. This is a 3-mana 1/1 human wizard. Whenever they enter, you create a 4/4 white beast creature token with this creature can't attack or block alone. And as long as you control 4 or more creature tokens you control have flying. I love both the flavor and the art on this card. So you can either blink Toby to make as many of those 4/4s as possible, or just lean into the more generic token strategy with like planeswalkers like Elspeth Sun's Champion that makes a bunch of 1/1s. They're straightforward, which is fine, but I think their core gameplay loop might get a little bit repetitive. So I'm going to go ahead and put them solidly in the fun tier. Maybe they're very fun. I think they're solidly fun. Next up is Tyvar the Pummeler. This is a 3-mana 3/3 elf warrior that has tap another untapped creature you control. Tyvar the Pummeler gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. And you can pay 3 green. Creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Tyvar seems like a fine option if you want slightly less scary Elf Ball commander, or want a win condition in the command zone. It buffs your board, but it doesn't provide any evasion or something like trample. Unless you already have that on board, or have a ton of tokens, this ability only seems fine. You could build a Power Matters deck with this at the helm, but I feel like this is going to be a lot better in the 99 of decks. So I'm going to go ahead and put Tyvar in the kinda fun tier. I think above Kona. It's pretty close between these two. I think Kona is just a little too generic. Next up is Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls. This is a 4-mana 4/4 Elder Demon with flying, ward, pay 2 life, and whenever an opponent loses life for the first time during each of their turns, put a +1/+1 counter on Valgavoth and draw a card. This is the Rakdos Precon commander, and it reminds me a little bit of Obnixilis Captive Kingpin. Both are powerful 4-mana commanders that want to burn the table and get bigger. But with this guy, we get to draw cards versus Obnixilis, where we have to impulse. Also, this is a little bit harder to trigger because it has to be on our opponent's turn, and we only get 1 trigger per opponent. I think this is a fun commander, and I definitely want 1 or 2 of these for the 99 of some decks. So I'm going to put it solidly in the fun tier. Next up is Valgavoth, Terror Eater. This is a 9-mana 9/9 Elder Demon with flying, lifelink, ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents, and if a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. This actually doesn't seem like a super scary commander. Mostly because it's 9 mana, which is a lot if you aren't a green deck. And yes, black definitely has ways to accelerate, but not nearly as much as green. And while its effect is powerful, people know who the commander is. Do I think the effect is fun though? Well, yes, of course, but maybe not as a commander. I definitely want this for my Mikaeus deck, but not at the helm of a deck. So I think I'm going to put them in kinda fun. Maybe there's an argument for not fun because of how oppressive the effect can be, but I feel like for 9 mana, it definitely isn't a not fun command. Next up is Victor, Valagoth's Seneschal. This is a 3-mana 3/3 human warlock, and it has Eerie, so whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, Surveil 2 if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. If it's the second time, each opponent discards a card, and if it's the third time, put a creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Notably, it doesn't give it a finality counter, which seems absolutely wild. Now, their ability is a solid enchantment payoff and lets you reanimate any creature. I love the theme of reanimating enchantment creatures, such as Ervinox the Mind Flail, Overlord of the Mistmoors, or Doomwake Giant, or Valgavoth Terror Eater. But it does say any graveyard, so just find the best creature and go wild. And we don't know how relevant rooms will be in Commander, so I'm just kind of ignoring that part of the card for now. And all in all, this seems like an interesting take on Enchantress that doesn't just want to combo off. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in the fun tier. Next up is Winter, Cynical Opportunist. This is a 4-mana 2/5 human warlock with Death Touch, and whenever they attack, mill 3 cards, and Delirium. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile any number of cards from your graveyard with 4 or more card types among them. If you do, put a permanent card from among them onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it. This is the Golgari face commander, and oh boy, do I love this card. It reminds me a little bit of Babala Saga because it cares about card types. And then you get to cheat some big permanents into play, and the requirement isn't that hard to trigger. I think Nesting Ground is an absolute must in this deck to remove the finality counters, and I am 100% getting this precon, and probably going to keep it pretty stock. But I also want to build a powerful version of this deck. This card is 100% going into the wanna build category. Next up is Winter Misanthropic Guide. This is a 4 mana, 3/4 human warlock with Ward 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws 2 cards. And Delirium, as long as there are 4 or more card types from among cards in your graveyard, each opponent's maximum hand size is equal to 7 minus the number of those card types. It's just a weird Jund commander that can quickly reduce the hand size of our opponents. There are a total of 9 card types, and a lot of cards have multiple types, so this will be pretty easy to get online. But do I think this is fun? Well, no. I think it's strong, but I'm definitely not interested in playing this or even putting it in the 99 of most of my casual decks. I think it goes in the not fun category. Next up is Duskmourn All Questioning. This is a 3 mana 1/1 human wizard. At the beginning of your end step, if a land entered the battlefield under your control this turn, and you control a prime number of lands, create Primo the Indivisible. It's a legendary 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, and then you put that many +1/+1 counters on it. So it has reminder text 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, and 31 are prime numbers. I don't know if the rules text actually cares that it goes up to 31 or if it's all prime numbers. And if it's all of them, technically 97 I think is the highest prime number we can have in a game of Commander. So maybe you can build a deck with 97 lands, this and some other cards. And notably, this token trigger isn't May, so as you hit more lands, you're going to keep getting a new token, which can be cute if you want to sacrifice it at instant speed with something like Greater Good. And while it is a Simic value commander, I love the idea of sacrificing and replaying lands to repeatedly trigger her ability. Honestly, I think this is going in the very fun category. Pretty close to wanna build. And finally, we have Duskmourn Mystery Unraveler. This is a 4 mana 3/3 human wizard with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, manifest Dread if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. Otherwise, you may turn a permanent card you control face up. This is the face commander from the Civic Precon, and it's another landfall deck. However, the unique ability of flipping cards face up when you play lands is really cool. Now, I still think this is a very powerful commander that might lead to some pretty linear play patterns, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong. So I think until then, I'm going to go ahead and put Duskmourn right in the fun category. It's very possible that they're actually very fun, or once I see it in play, I want to build it, but it's Simic Landfall, and we have a lot of those already. And that wraps up my Duskmourn fun ranking video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more videos like this, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe, and ring that bell to get notifications when all my videos go live, and let me know in the comments what commander you're looking forward to building from Duskmourn. Alrighty nerds, I'll see you in the next one.